Welcome to the Colorado Fire College Podcast, your source for knowledge to keep you in the fight. Stay tuned for the latest educational lectures, new product reviews, and interviews with the top firefighting professionals.
Yes, 5, you ready?
Let's get started. Here are your hosts, Lieutenant Chris Gay and Lieutenant Jordan Sherrill.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Colorado Fire College. I'm your host, Chris Gay, and today we are recording live at the AT&T store in West Denver off of Colfax with Garrett Doyle and Jumani Berkeley. Both these gentlemen currently work for FirstNet with AT&T, and they're going to discuss the possibilities that it can bring to your fire department. How are you gentlemen doing today?
Excellent. Thanks for having us today.
Beautiful, gentlemen. Beautiful. It's good to have you aboard. First off, what is FirstNet and how can it help us in the fire service?
Well, my name's Garrett Doyle. I'm with the FirstNet program here in the Rocky Mountain States. And FirstNet is the nationwide public safety broadband network that was designed by first responders for first responders. Really kind of came out of the 9/11 Commission report where communications were really challenging. And this was a recommendation, and fast forward 15 or 20 years, and here we are today with an alternative public safety wireless broadband network.
It's amazing. And it's one of the things that we've noticed after September 11th that the communications really fell apart quickly when a disaster struck. No communications were available by cell phone. And we really learned that in fire, EMS, and police, we relied too heavily on that network. So I think this is a great first step in getting us evolving in the right direction. Yes, sir. So honestly, we decided to bring FirstNet on because we were impressed by the hustle of one of their sales rep, Jumani. He actually met me at a sales pump while I was refilling a brush engine after a call, and his hustle impressed me, so we decided we wanted to bring him along and bring him onto the show and give him a chance to represent FirstNet the best he could.
Yes, sir. I pretty much work on sales, so coming to homes, making sales, also introducing FirstNet and CRU to potential customers.
Perfect. So you'd be the first line that people would usually come across when they decide they wanted to switch over from, let's say, the other evil empires over to AT&T. You'd be the first rep they'd come in contact with, correct?
Correct. Yes, sir, and thank you.
Beautiful. And then Garrett Doyle, you're the regional manager, so you do more of the logistical ends, working with larger departments, organizations such as ambulance services, regional municipalities, and, for example, the DFPC.
Correct, yes. So I have a team of folks here in the Rocky Mountain region, and we work directly with police, fire, EMS, emergency management, and other groups that are primary eligible. And we also work with our extended primary community. So think about utilities, tow truck companies, and other organizations that are involved in emergency response.
Beautiful. So the network itself is kind of a sub-network using the infrastructure that's already existing so that we don't necessarily bog down the communications on the primary lines. Is that how the FirstNet works?
Yeah, so I think you have to think about FirstNet as a private-public partnership. That's kind of a big term that we're seeing these days, where there is a component that comes from AT&T as the private partner. There's the federal government, which is the FirstNet Authority, which their CTO labs are up in Boulder, part of the same group where PSCR operates. And they brought spectrum from the federal government, some initial seed money, and then AT&T came together, won the bid to build and operate this. And then the other partner, obviously, is the first responders that are on the network. And so this network utilizes federal spectrum. It also utilizes AT&T towers, but it is a physically separate core network. It has a different network identifier or a PLMN, so you'll have a black SIM that goes into your device, and when your device registers to the network, it registers as a FirstNet user. It'll say FirstNet on the device, not AT&T or not another provider, and that is how we can offer unique services, whether that is priority and preemption, so that in times of network congestion, you have unique access to band 14 spectrum, or whether it's having end-to-end encryption or other unique services, which I know we're going to get into later.
Absolutely. So that actually brings up my next question. Since you're using the black SIMs, does that mean you can use any equipment, or does it have to be specialized equipment to be able to go on the FirstNet network?
So kind of yes, kind of no, right? So we have over 370 different certified devices. So your everyday carry device might be a Samsung device or an iOS Apple device, and those will certainly work. Those go through FirstNet certification, so you can use them. We also have more ruggedized types of devices. Think of like a Sonim or a Kyocera Duraforce type of device that is a more rugged for first responder proof.
Correct.
Then we also have a lot of IoT type devices. So think of sensors, shot spot detectors, others that will be put out into the field to do remote monitoring. And then we are continuing to evolve in the ecosystem of device types that are available.
Absolutely. And for the firefighters who do not know what ShotSpot is, it's actually a sound acoustic device that'll help locate and triangulate where gunshots are fired and help move cameras to that area and give police response a more directed access. It's actually a pretty impressive system that's going nationwide and is actually being very effective in high-risk areas. So now, since you guys are operating on a different type of spectrum network, is there any different cost associated to the customer on the back end?
That's a great question. FirstNet is coming to the market at what I call competitive price. We're not expecting first responders to pay a premium to be on the network. So coming in and signing up for service as an individual subscriber, you could expect to pay about what you would pay for commercial service. In fact, oftentimes with some of the special offers, it's lower cost than what you would be able to get as a consumer.
Correct.
Agencies also can sign up, and in the same holds true there, where you're going to see pricing and see costs that are in line or less than what you would pay from a commercial provider.
Which is always good. Firefighters and EMS personnel do not make the most amount of money, contrary to popular belief. Mm-hmm. So any discount's always a good thing.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, Jimani, honestly, everything I'm hearing is impressing me. And if I decided to switch from the evil empire I'm currently using, how would I go about doing that?
Well, you could either talk to myself or come into a location like we're at today, and pretty much we'll go over your account, we'll go over the numbers, we'll let you see the benefits of having FirstNet versus what you currently have with your carrier, which is a lot of different perks that we have for you guys. Yes,
Very cool. So if somebody specifically wanted to come talk to you, what location are you based out of?
So me personally, I'm what they call in-home expert. So I will have to give you my number and a card. So I really don't have a particular store I am stationed at. I'm mostly in a vehicle all the time. So I usually come to the customer. So if somebody wanted to get in touch with me and say, go over, say, for instance, pricing, I will get their information and go to their home.
Oh, very nice. In-home
Correct.
service is always a benefit.
Correct. Or say, for instance, even your college or fire department or police station, wherever I need to be.
Well, I want to jump back to the equipment and basically some of the more logistical things. I know that oftentimes in disasters, communication agencies are called upon to help build infrastructure instantly where everything has been wiped out. How does FirstNet go about doing that?
The FirstNet program includes a fleet of over 100 deployable assets. Kind of the backbone of those are the FirstNet SatColts, or satellite cell on light truck. You may have seen them before at a time of disaster, but it's essentially a rolling cell site that is fully self-contained. Its own power, its own backhaul, and those can be brought in, and they have about a 60-foot pole or tower that goes up and essentially can project coverage into an area that doesn't have any, so think wildland fire, or to supplement in case there has been fire or other types of destruction. For example, the Marshall Lake fire here just in the beginning of the year. And so an agency can then make that request. Then those get dispatched out and set up at no cost to those agencies. We've done them quite a bit, from everything from wildland fires, where we put in, we had between 8 and 12 of the Marshall Lake Fire, providing temporary coverage to Gilpin County when they were doing their testing for COVID back during the pandemic in a part of their county that was very rural. And so that's been a really significant part of the FirstNet program, is agencies having access to that. And that's an agency level request. That's not going to the state. That's not going to the federal government. That is your individual agency making that request. As small as Howard Fire making a request for one, I think a year and a half ago when there was a large wildland fire in their community, all the way up to large federal agencies.
Did you hear that, chiefs and commanding officers? Means you do not need federal authorization to get mobile communication set up. All you need to do is request it from AT&T and the FirstNet.
There you go.
So that's actually a huge asset. I know when it came down to the Marshall Lake Fire, obviously that was one of the challenging fires, being one of the largest and most destructive fires in Colorado history to date. That happened only 4 months ago, and it's something we're still reeling from and feeling the effects of every day.
Yeah, I was stationed up at the Incident Command Post for, I think, 8 or 9 of the days, providing support along with our teams to make sure that the fire departments and the public safety in those areas had access. What's great about it is that when they walked in as a public safety responder that had FirstNet, there was nothing special they had to do to their phone. They didn't have to dial anything. All they did is when they showed up in that incident area with a FirstNet device, it just connected to the network as usual, and everything just functioned. And as you can imagine, there was a lot of demands being given to public safety at that time, and the last thing they want to worry about is communications. And the great news is those folks in the field didn't have to worry. They just walked in and it worked.
And that's one of the things I will agree with. When I walked into the command post that day, communications were scrambled, but that's one thing that we never worried about, is we always had comms available. So that kind of brings up my next aspect. With a situation like that and resources scattered about, how would Z-Access work and benefit that situation?
Yeah, Z-Access, which is the ability to know height above terrain, so that when you're inside of a building, a law enforcement, a firefighter, a public safety person could be located. We've had the GPS lat long for a number of years, so we can know where somebody is. But if they're in a multi-story building, it's tough to know what floor they're on. So part of the FirstNet program is to have Z-Access capabilities so that can be integrated into the command structure for a dispatch center or for the fire department. And we've launched a version about a year ago, and we just launched a second version just recently of enhancing that, so that you can then see where that officer is. I had the privilege of being out at the West Metro Fire training facility down off Kipling, and they did a great demonstration of what it takes to clear a building when they lose contact with a first responder inside of that. And it was taking 20 plus minutes to clear that area to look for that individual as they're on hands and knees going through the smoke and the haze and the chaos of the fire. But with a Z-Access product, during that test, they were able to cut it down to 2 to 3 minutes. And as you can imagine, that oftentimes is the difference between life and a tragedy.
Absolutely, especially in RIT situations when you're calling for backup and you know exactly where your downed firefighter paramedics at. That's an impressive piece of technology. I think that definitely should be explored more. How has push-to-talk been evolving?
Yeah, push-to-talk is really continues to evolve. It launched a number of years ago, but as you can imagine, there's a strong interest in seeing how push-to-talk over broadband LTE can work together and complement what happens in the LMR world and such. And one of the things that it really does for you is it allows you to expand the use of that service outside of the LMR footprint. So when that fire chief is returning to a different community or doing mutual aid response, they may not be able to participate in a talk group on an LMR radio, but if they have some interoperability set up with push-to-talk, that's something that they can do. We see a lot of private ambulance companies using that as a means to integrate with their local public safety officials and dispatch centers. It also is really helpful too because radios are expensive, and oftentimes there are users that need a device and they need to communicate, but they don't need the same ruggedness and the same specs that they need for the fire because they're sitting at a desk or they're on a trip or doing other types of mutual aid. So push to talk is a strong evolving solution that we're seeing used on a regular basis. There's one agency here in Colorado. The fire chief lives in the neighboring town, and as you know, I think you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, our public safety folks are not always the highest paid, and living in a resort town is expensive. Mm-hmm. And so this particular chief lives in the neighboring town, but because he has push to talk on his FirstNet device, he can be at home and still listen to the mutual aid channels, or he can scan all of his channels to see what's going on without having to call the station on a continual basis checking in, and he can still participate in that.
I honestly think the price point per unit is going to be the big selling factor. $5K versus a couple $100 per unit is going to be a big selling factor for most of these departments.
It is, but I also recognize that this is not a replacement to what's going on with your LMR radio. There's some specs for going into a fire and other situations where LMR is still a very viable and capable solution. In fact, we're also seeing LTE chips sets being put into those devices. Both Harris as well as Motorola both have devices that have FirstNet capabilities built right into the LMR set. So we're going to continue to see this as a convergence of services where you'll see, everyone from maybe it's somebody just doing fire inspection. They might just carry a FirstNet cellular phone as their smartphone as their device, versus someone that's actually going into a wildland fire or into a structure fire.
Yeah, because they wouldn't need the intrinsic capabilities of those units.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, I know a lot of communications and disasters are now looking to drone use. What does FirstNet use for drones, and how would that be implemented in like an MCI situation?
Yeah, so our use case for the drones is a couple. One is one of our deployables we have are, we call them flying cows, and what that really means is it's a tethered device that then hovers several hundred feet up, and it's tethered with power and fiber optic cable so that it's essentially a flying antenna so that we can deploy that to enhance coverage instead of using a sat-colt. As you can imagine, the sat-colt itself is limited to about 60 feet versus us using a flying cow that can go up hundreds of feet, and that really helps. We use some of those in some of the hurricane recovery areas so we can get really large swaths of coverage. The other thing we see a lot of use is needing to have real-time access to what's going on with that drone, especially at that the handset level or the controller. So as they're doing search and rescue, they want to be able to send that data live back to a dispatch or to some other type of communication point, and they can do that simply by having cellular access right there. We also use drones at AT&T for inspecting our own cell sites post-disaster. It's certainly a better way for us to do damage assessment, so we can use it there as well.
Absolutely. I know DJI has done quite a bit evolving lately in the Matrice 30 they just came out with. Are you guys going to be looking at possibly integrating with the docking stations that are looking at?
Yeah, a lot of them are doing that today through Wi-Fi or through Ethernet out to a hotspot or a cradle point style router to do that for sure. I think down the road, there could be air to ground stuff that happens in the future, but there's still some FCC issues and other things that will need to be solved before we see direct communication from the flying drone.
Ironically, I think Amazon's pushing the agenda with the FAA quite aggressively, so we might see some benefits coming down our way through that venue.
I'm really hoping I can get my pizza delivered to my house that way sooner than later.
That would be pretty cool. Well, gentlemen, that knocks out most of my questions. Is there anything else you guys would like to add to the podcast?
I would just like to say that FirstNet is a service that was came out of that 9/11 Commission report, and a couple of years ago, it was really what I call slideware. It was a lot of brochures, and what I can say now is there's 3 million devices connected to FirstNet every day being used by first responders and those that support first responders in their critical mission. So it's no longer just an idea. It is truly something that is a game changer for folks. And I also want to reinforce that there's two ways you can get involved. You certainly can get involved as an individual, as a firefighter, sworn law enforcement, ER doc and ER nurse, and those types of areas. And you can do that individually by going down to the store or setting up a meeting with one of my colleagues. And then your agency also can be involved. And the great news is it doesn't matter whether you're individual or you're with your agency. You get that priority, you get that preemption, you get access to those deployable assets if you roll up on a fire, you roll up on an incident. And I really think this has been one of the great equalizers. I deal with a lot of rural areas in my region, and FirstNet has been delivering services that traditionally have only been available to the largest agencies in the biggest cities. I really think FirstNet has been a technology leveling the playing field, so that whether you're Oak Creek Fire Department in Routt County or whether you're Colorado Springs Fire Department or West Metro Fire, you're getting access to latest and greatest technology.
Absolutely. And honestly, looking at everything I've seen, talking to these gentlemen, and knowing the communications issues that are happening on the front lines, I personally feel that FirstNet's being underutilized.
I agree, and we're certainly happy to help you out and see what we can do for you and see what's available in your community. Literally billions of dollars have been invested into this and will continue to be. The relationship in this private-public partnership is a 25-year contract, so this is not something that is we're just building for tomorrow. This is something we're building for decades, and I truly think it will continue to revolutionize public safety communications.
Agreed. Well, if you'd like to see Jumani personally, feel free to give Learn at coloradofirecollege.com an email, and we will set you up with his contact information, and we'll go from there. If you gentlemen have any other things you'd like to say, now's your opportunity.
Please feel free to reach out to me directly, Garrett Doyle, GD1057 at att.com, or you can reach out to our host, and I'm sure he can pass my information on if your agency is interested or you have any questions. We also try to participate in a lot of the meetings across the state in professional organizations, so if you see us there, please do stop by.
Which is actually another great topic. If an OEM's interested, let me know, and we can definitely get you in contact with them. I know he's already working with Gilpin OEM, and he's done great things out there with the new communications that they're launching, the ability to still use the remote spot censoring systems for the fire watch systems they're now implementing in Gilpin County. Well, gentlemen, thank you much for taking the time out and coming to do this podcast. It's been great to have you guys here, and I really appreciate you guys taking the time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Colorado Fire College Podcast. We release a new podcast every Wednesday. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. While you're at it, leave us a rating and review to make it easier for others to find the show. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Colorado Fire College. Visit our website at coloradofirecollege.com. Sign up for our newsletter and get access to even more content. You can even ask questions or recommend topics to be featured on upcoming episodes. That's coloradofirecollege.com.